Hey everyone, peace be with you. I hope you all are doing well. So we're back with another episode to this series of the Islam nobody told you about. So I made a promise. The day that we spoke about unity versus Trinity, that I would bring the verses from the Bible which talk about how Jesus knows, or how it's unknown to Jesus when the last day would be, but it's known to God the Father, as is mentioned in the Bible. And I brought my Bible today. Yes, I'm a Muslim, and yes, I own a Bible. At least one. I have another one. This is the New American Standard Bible. I have the King James Version as well. So if we go to Mark 13:32, Mark 13:32 tells us that Jesus said, "But of that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone." It's italicized. The word alone is italicized. Father alone. They say that the Father is God. That's who they, when you ask them who the Son is, Jesus. And then there's the Holy Spirit, or Holy Soul. And then there's God the Father. He's the only one who knows. So how can they be one if one doesn't know what the other knows? This makes no sense. Then we have Matthew 24:36. Matthew 24:36, which is before that. Trying to be gentle with the pages. They're very, very thin. Matthew 24:36, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone." There you have it. That's in the Bible. And whichever Christian is watching this, please question what you believe in. I question what I believe. Believe me, if Islam was... I'm not following Islam because my parents, my mom and my dad follow Islam. I'm not following Islam because my parents brought me up as a Muslim. That's not why. Believe me, if truth was in Christianity or in Judaism or any other religion, I would be following that religion. I would pursue the truth. That is what I am after, the truth. And that is what we are after, at least those of us who are, well, a lot of people who are not Zaydi and not Mu'tazili are also seeking the truth as well. So we spoke about those considered to be, we spoke about corporeality and how God is not corporeal. It's impossible for God to be corporeal. We talked about those who are considered to be corporeal according to the Zaydi scholar, well, I believe it was the Imams of Ahl-Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them, the family of the Prophet, the progeny of the Prophet. We spoke about who is considered, what the ruling is about the corporealists, and it's that they are disbelievers. And so Imam al-Hadi did not mention that. He said that the corporealists are disbelievers if they attribute limbs to God. And this is what they do. They attribute limbs to God. They say God has hands and a face, and just nonsense. They are disbelievers in the Zaydi view. And then he mentioned that the fatalists, we will talk about fate and destiny later on in this book. This book is awesome, covers everything. And I will mention which book it is towards the end. The fatalists he mentioned are not disbelievers. So those people who believe in destiny, qadar, are not disbelievers. They are basically the Ash'ari, the Ash'aris. Now, I contacted a Zaydi brother who I'm close to, and I asked him if the corporealists, meaning the Mujassimah, those who basically say that God has limbs, are they kuffar? He said yes, meaning in accordance with Zaydi creed, the Zaydi creed, which is in line with what Imam AL-HÂDI believes. He said not, and he mentioned that the fatalists are also kuffar. Why? Because there's a verse in the Qur'an that mentions something related to idol worship. I'll bring that verse. I'll talk about it when the subject comes. In any case, God has nothing to do with people's wrongdoings. If that verse is very clear. If God has something to do with people's idol worship, then it would mean that God made them do something that he didn't want them to do, and it's the worst sin you can commit, shirk, polytheism, and God making you do it makes God responsible for that act. It wouldn't mean that God literally committed the act, but he made you commit that act, which is shirk. And if you attribute any kind of evil to God, but if you go into specifics, these kinds of evils, how can you be a Muslim? You're not a Muslim. I don't believe, by the way, in the punishment of the apostate. I don't believe that he is to be punished. I believe he gets demoted to the level of the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians. In Islam, they're considered disbelievers, Christians and Jews. That doesn't mean we're rude to them. That doesn't mean we persecute them. Maybe people have done it. That doesn't mean that that's what our belief is, to persecute them and mistreat them and hurt them and kill them. This is not what the belief is. No. It just means that they're disbelievers. They're not Muslim. We invite them to Islam. I invite those of you who are non-Muslims watching this to Islam. If you want me to finish the book first, then I invite you to Islam. I invite you to read the Qur'an. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, leave them in the comment box. Some of you have actually, but I'll get to you, God willing. So, I don't believe in punishment for the apostates. I don't believe in that. Allah says in the Qur'an, God says in the Qur'an, La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. I know there, might be different interpretations, but killing the apostate is not a punishment mentioned in the Qur'an. And when you take someone's life away, this is a very, very big act. And someone ought to be very careful when it comes to this big act. So the apostate is not, I don't believe in that punishment. In the Qur'an, there are punishments mentioned, just like in the Old Testament, there are punishments mentioned in the Bible, which is right here in front of me. More punishments than one can imagine are in the Bible. But I don't believe in the killing of the apostates. So let's continue with God not being limited. God is not limited. Let's continue. Before anything I begin, I would like to say, as I always say, I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I praise and I glorify him as he ought to be praised and glorified. I forgot to say it yesterday, but let me saying it today count for yesterday as well. So these are Imam al-HÂDI'S words, and then I'll tell you when the commentary begins. There are various verses that prove that he is independent, he meaning God. La yahtaj. He is independent. He does not need. That he is independent of space. Many other verses testify to the reality that God is independent of the confines of spatial boundaries, some of which include the following. He is unlike anything. Laysa kamithlihi shay. Chapter 42, verse 11. In that he is not a corporeal body, like other corporeal bodies. Vision does not reach him. Rather, he reaches all vision. He is the all-subtle, the all-aware. Chapter 6, verse 103. In that he is not a being that is manifested by the senses and therefore subject to space. He is independent. Qur'an 15:35. in that he is independent of space to manifest his essence. And there is none like unto him. 113:13. 113:3, sorry. In that he does not belong to a category of beings encompassed by space. To God belongs the highest likeness, for he is the omnipotent, the all-wise. 16:60. In that nothing else can be said to be higher or grander than he. He is all encompassing over his slaves. 6:18. In that nothing of his creation encompasses him, and so forth. So the Qur'an is a witness and an evidence that is a witness to and an evidence that God is not like anything. He is absolute, making him worthy of worship. If someone comes to you telling you, my God has fingers and hands, if someone came to someone saying, my God has fingers and hands, and the other person says, my God is beyond that, my God exists without a physical body, which God is higher? Which God is stronger? Of course, the one that exists without physical body. Look at what kind of muck the Salafis and others got themselves into. Very stupid people. There are various verses that may apparently suggest that God is a body or possesses parts. However, these verses have been interpreted. Ta'wil. Ta'wil means interpretation. Interpreting verses that appear a certain way, but they are subject to interpretation, meaning they don't mean as they appear. However, these verses have been interpreted by the many of our exegetes from all schools of thought. So exegetes, if that's how it's pronounced, exegete is a person who commentates and explains and interprets the Qur'an. These exegetes range from classical to medieval to modern. The argument that many of the exegetes make is that if the Arabic language permits various interpretations of words and phrases, then what would be wrong with interpreting these verses to denote an understanding in line with our belief system? So if in the Arabic language you can use ta'wil, interpretation, to interpret words and phrases, why should we not interpret these verses, the verses of the Qur'an, which are in line with our beliefs, using interpretation? Not so that they can please us, no, but to justify their meanings. How are those meanings correct? Do they agree with the intellect? How are those meanings correct? Do they agree with the intellect? Because other things don't make any sense. And they land you in quicksand or some kind of crazy glue enough to almost drown you. I'm a poet today. I am a poet, actually, in reality. So we will look at some of these verses and examine them in the light of logic and revealed text to disprove the literal connotation of the verse. Some of the opponents of this view say that God is mentioned in the Qur'an as dwelling in the heavens. They use some verses to establish their view, some of which include, do you not believe in the one in the heavens? Qur'an 67:16. He is the all-encompassing over his slaves. 6:18. They say that because God is said to be in, fi means in the Arabic language. They say that because God is said to be in the heavens, as well as over, fawq, above, or over, or on top of, or up, over his slaves, he is literally confined to the heavens. To this we reply that if one interprets these verses to mean that God is literally in the heavens, one is forced to admit that God is dependent upon his creation to contain him, which we already mentioned is impossible. That would not make him God for him to rely on his creations. You think God is some kind of king, like a humanly king, ordering people around to build him things so that he build him a palace to live in? You think God is like Prophet Solomon to order jinn around, or to command the jinn to build him palaces? And if I'm not mistaken, he was leaning on a stick. You think God is like that? He's a king in that to him belongs everything, dominion. Not in that he's reliant on other things. Furthermore, one is also forced to answer the question as to where did God exist before he created the heavens to contain him? Where did he exist before he created space and time? Where was God? He existed without a place. Such phrases as in and above have been interpreted by our scholars in a way that does not contradict God's transcendence. Some of the books of the Quranic exegesis narrate that the one in the heavens refers to the angels of punishment. Also, they narrate that the one in the heavens refers to the one whose authority is manifested from the heavens. That is to say, the one in which his authority and commands are carried out. This is the import of the statement of the Exalted. He is God in the heavens and the earth. 6:3. The opponents also bring forth the following verses. Do they wait but that God and his angels should come? Ati, meaning coming. Do they wait but that God and his angels should come to them in the shade of the clouds? Qur'an 2:10. 2:10 means chapter 2, verse 2:10. When I pause, picture that to be a colon. And your Lord has come with his angels row by row. 89:22. They say that these verses are explicit in denoting that God is a body in the heavens. We reply by saying that the meaning of these verses is that the judgment of God is what is meant as coming. The judgment is what is meant as coming. His verdict, his judgment, what he has ruled, that's what's coming. It is similar to God's statements, those before them already plotted, but God came to their building from the foundations, so that the roof fell upon them. 16:26. And they thought that their fortresses would protect them from God, but God came to them from where they least expected. 59:2. No one would argue that God himself went to the buildings and fortresses of the disbelievers and deniers. No one would argue in defense of that God himself came and punished them. The Salafis don't even say that God himself came. These verses are clear in meaning that the punishment of God is what came to the disbelievers, even though they say God came. This is further emphasized by the continuation of the aforementioned verse. Those before them already plotted, but God came to their building from the foundations so that the roof fell upon them. In Surah An-Nahl, surah in Arabic means chapter in the surah, not surah. Surah means image or picture. Surah with the sin is chapter. Surah An-Nahl. An-Nahl, the bee. If you want to know where I got the t sound, Surah An-Nahl, you can study the Arabic language, you'll learn exactly. I recommend a book called it's called The Essentials of Quranic Grammar. The Essentials of Quranic Grammar. It's by a man by the name of, I forget his name. but you can find it on Amazon and you can find it online in general. The Essentials of Quranic Grammar. It's 2 volumes, paperback, black cover, with a picture of a key or a keyhole and the Qur'an underneath it or behind it on the cover. You shouldn't have a problem finding it. So in Surah An-Nahl, in the B, the chapter the B, and the punishment came to them from where they did not perceive. 16:26. Those before them already plotted, but God came to their building from the foundations, so that the roof fell upon them. And later in the verse it says, and the punishment came to them from where they did not perceive. I believe that's all one verse. That's what he meant when he said, that's what they mean, the commentators, when they say the continuation. Meaning it's that the punishment is what came, is what's emphasized. The punishment came. But one might say, well, what if God and his punishment came? Meaning God came and he punished the people. God came and he punished them. That's not what it means. God did not come in physical form, and again, that would limit him. I don't have the entire verse in front of me, but based on what I'm seeing here, if someone were to be asking that right now or anytime, it would mean what it does not mean. It would mean what it does not mean in your interpretation, that God himself came. It's a way of saying that God punished, that his punishment came. Likewise, we say that the verses, do they wait but that God and his angels should come to them in the shade of the clouds? 2:10. And your Lord has come with his angels row by row. 89:22. Refer to his judgment. We say that the verses refer to his judgment and punishment. This view is also narrated by some of the exegetes of the generality. The generality means those people who are. So in the beginning of this book, we can talk about it in another video. He meant either Imam Al-Hadi or the commentators mentioned that the Zaydis divide the Muslims into 4 groups. The Shia, Mu'tazila, Khawarij, and Ammah. The Ammah are everyone else. Basically today they would be known as the Sunnis. Basically. This view is also narrated by, and the Ibadis, they refuse to be called descendants of Khawarij, although I'm inclined to say that they are a kind of, descendant. Maybe they're different than they are. They refuse though. The Ibadis say we basically have nothing to do with the Khawarij. God knows best. Some people will say sometimes that we have nothing to do with something when they may have something to do with it. But I don't know. But anyways, those are the 4 categories. If I'm not mistaken, they're divided into 4 categories in the Zaydi view. So let's continue. So these verses that I mentioned, do they wait but that God and his angels should come to them in the shade of the clouds, and your Lord has come to and your Lord has come with his angels row by row, refer to his judgment and punishment. This view is also narrated by some of the exegetes of the generality, such as Imam al-Tabari. This interpretation is beautifully explicated by God in a seemingly parallel verse. Do they wait but that the angels should come to them, or there comes to them the command of their Lord? 16:33. In this context, command denotes punishment. So do they wait but that the angels should come to them, or there comes to them the command of their Lord? In this context, command denotes punishment. By the way, I want to make it clear that when he says we, sometimes we, when scholars say we, let me just change something quickly. Sometimes when scholars say we, they're referring to themselves. It's a respectful way of referring to oneself. And then sometimes when they say we, they're referring to their group or their members of their members who share their beliefs or share their views. Like I believe Al-Qurtubi in his tafsir says, وَقَالَ عُلَمَاؤُنَا, and our scholars say, meaning the Malikis, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it means. Some of the corporealists, the Mujassimah, anthropomorphists, corporealists, Hashwiyah, whatever you want to call them. Some of the corporealists also bring forward the verse, indeed, the righteous will be amongst gardens and rivers in a seat of truth near. Inda could mean at or near. Inda, near a one sovereign and omnipotent. Qur'an 54 to 55. Chapter 54, verses 54 to 55. They say that because one is said to be seated near God, this means that God is a body. This means that God is a body because that person is seated near God, according to the Qur'an, literally translated. We say that this interpretation is incorrect and that the intended meaning is that the believers will be seated in high places in paradise. The word near, inda, here does not mean proximity to a body. Rather, it means in a place of the pleasure of their Lord. I interpret this as it could mean in the pleasure of their Lord. I don't deny that. But it can also mean, when you say, when God mentions in the Qur'an that the martyrs are inda, they're with their Lord. One could say that they're in the presence of their Lord, or they're with their Lord, or they're near their Lord. I would say it's more with. Another translator may say that it's not, but with their Lord. Does it literally mean that they're with their Lord? It means that they're under the care of their Lord. They're not subject to this earth. We are under the care of our Lord. We are under the dominion of God. But here, we are in an open field. We can be... The Satan is a predator who pursues us as the prey that we are to him, or the prey that we can be to him. And we are in this world not living the way we would if we were in a tranquil place like paradise, with God, meaning not literally, but in a peaceful position, under the safety of God, under the protection of God. The interpretation the commentators give is in a place of the pleasure of their Lord. That works too. Such an interpretation is in accord, meaning in agreement, in accord with the language, because one can say, you are near me. Indi means near me or with me, or you are near me in a place of high standing. This does not mean that the person is near another in bodily proximity. If someone is a mile away and he tells him by phone or by text or by walkie-talkie, or I don't know, somehow shouts that far, and he says, you are near me in a place of high standing. That person, if he says, how are you near me? You're not near me, you're far away, you're a mile away. That person did not understand the metaphor. That's not what he meant. He meant you're near me in a place of high standing, meaning that you are You mean a lot to me. You have a high position to me. I see you as someone with high esteem. You're esteemed to me. Also, the exalted meaning the Most High, God. Also, the exalted uses the word near in various places of the Qur'an to denote a meaning other than bodily proximity. For example, God says, and if you were to see when the criminals hang their heads near their Lord. And if you were to see when the criminals hang their heads near their Lord. 32:12. Does this mean that the sinners will be close in proximity to God? Certainly not. This verse means that they will be in a place of disgrace and shame before their Lord. They will be in a place of disgrace and shame before their Lord, in a position, in a status of disgrace and shame before their Lord. We'll finish with this final poem. By the way, to those of you who are Qur'an-centric or Qur'an alone, knowing the Arabic language is more than just knowing the grammar. You also have to understand the metaphors that were used in the old days. The old days meaning in the time of pre-Islamic Arabia, in the times of ignorance, the Jahili period, in the times of Jahiliyyah, the times of ignorance, that's what they were called. You have to know the metaphors of that time. So I advise you, if you don't already, to look into the history texts and look into the books of tafsir to find those poems and explanations in order to help you understand. If you don't want to accept the narrations, that's fine, but at least look at what the wording means. Because it could be that your understanding of Arabic grammar by itself is not sufficient enough. It may be strong, but not sufficient enough. So you would have to know the meanings of that used in that time, the implications used in that time, and the wordings and phrases used in that time to mean and understand what they meant. Furthermore, this meaning is customarily used in the language, meaning the Arabic language, The pre-Islamic Arab poet, Qais ibn al-Khatim said in his poem, "We are with what is near us, عندنا meaning with us or near us. Na is the suffix meaning us. When you have the suffix na. We are with what is near us, عندنا. You are with what is near you, عندك. That's the singular masculine, second person. The ka refers to one person, singular masculine. Study Arabic, God willing, so that you can understand the Qur'an and understand other content. What is near you, عندك, content and with different opinions. I'll read it again. So, Qais ibn al-Khatim, the pre-Islamic Arab poet. Even though he's from a pre-Islamic period, his example is used because they spoke using the Arabic language, the same Arabic language that God revealed the Qur'an in. He revealed the Qur'an in a language that they would understand. That's from the mercy of God, by the way, that they would understand and brought out of them, not them as in them being ignorant, but out of their race, out of their ethnicity, out of their culture, and out of their land. Maybe not their culture as in not their tribes, because they were different tribes with different ways of doing things. But from among them, he brought out a prophet. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Muhammad, the son of the servant of God. Abdullah means servant of God, sometimes pronounced Abdullah or Abdullah. Abdullah is the proper way to pronounce it. So Qais ibn al-Khatim said in his poem, we are with what is near us, you are with what is near you, content and with different opinions. He doesn't mean that one is in close proximity to his opinions. Rather, he means that one is in a place of firmness when it comes to the opinions they hold. One is in a place of firmness when it comes to the opinions he holds, or the people are in the state of firmness when it comes to the opinions they hold. That's what it means that we are with what is near us, you are with what is near you, content and with different opinions. It's not referring to literal proximity. It's not referring to literal proximity. So those of you thinking it's literal proximity, when you read it, you might say, oh, it's... Well, even if you read that poem and you were if you were an Arabic speaker fluent, you would know this cannot mean someone is literally close to something. There are different, the interpretation. There is something called ta'wil, and there are figures of speech, and the Arabs were poets. They used to, figures of speech were widely used among them, just like they are in any language. I don't know if there exists a language. I don't know. Maybe there is. I don't know if there exists a language that doesn't have any figure of speech or metaphors, saying things in a different way. Saying that I'm trying not to use something that's not moral for an example. For the sake of example, well, I'm not going to say... Okay, for the sake of example, if we say it's raining cats and dogs, I guess there's nothing wrong with that. If it's raining cats and dogs, in the English language, at least in America, we say it's raining cats and dogs. I haven't heard it in a while, but when it's raining hard and heavily, people say it's raining cats and dogs. Is it literally raining cats and dogs? No. But that's what they say, it's raining cats and dogs. Sometimes people say when something is crazy, it's a jungle out there. This place is, they're always making comparisons. There's always comparisons being made. There's always a figure of speech. There's always metaphors, similes. They're always being used all the time. Arabic, if Arabic was amongst these languages, I don't know all the languages. I'm exaggerating, not exaggerating, but rather trying to highlight the importance of metaphors in the Arabic language. If Arabic was in a competition with metaphors and poetic speech, then Arabic would be the king. Arabic would be the king of them all. It's like how African Americans, I hear this from them a lot. If Muhammad Ali, that's his name. That was his name. May God have mercy on him. And this isn't just him. You hear this a lot from you heard it a lot, at least in old African American speech. Maybe it still works. A lady asked him something. The answer is no. The answer was no, I think. The answer was no. So he asked her, "Does a chicken have lips?" This is the African American community is a poetic community. So you find poetry amongst people. God uses speech that involves metaphors in order for people to understand in ways that they understand. He uses their language. It's not that the Qur'an is a poem. Don't mistake the Qur'an for a poem. It's not a poem. It's a divine text. But in order for these people to understand the severity of something, or the how extreme or how strong or how mighty something is, God uses certain metaphors, certain words, certain language, in order for these people to say, wow. For them to be, kind of like blown back. Maybe when we hear it, we don't have that reaction, because that Arabic is not our native language. Is that particular Arabic, even for those who are Arabs, the classical Arabic Fusha, which is Qarashi, the Arabic of the Qarashis, the people of Quraysh, I believe it's their Arabic that the Qur'an was in. The Qur'an is to my right. I'm pointing down, but it's to my right. So that they would have been taken aback, and they were, by the Qur'an. To us, if we read the Qur'an in English, I don't think it means all that much unless someone is a specialist in the English language. Then he may be taken aback. Meaning, when I say taken aback, I hope it means what I think it means, meaning that he's kind of like in this state of shock. Wow, what did I just read? Someone who is well versed when it comes to writing and language, something which all of us need to excel at, because the power of communication is the most powerful thing. Communication is key. If you know how to communicate, I'm not saying I'm the best communicator, but communication is key. Many divorces could have been saved if it was only for communication. If proper communication was used, if the right kind of communication was used, I mean, you could have saved people from getting divorced. Communication is powerful. And there's different kinds of communication. Even those who cannot speak can communicate. Sign language. Helen Keller was deaf, blind. She was deaf and blind. And mute, I think. I think she was deaf, blind, and mute. If not, she was deaf and blind, but she still managed to, if I'm not mistaken, write texts. I think Helen Keller was in that situation. I don't think she died as a Muslimah. I wish she did. But this is communication. So the Qur'an is communication. Understand the communication. Read the Qur'an and understand it, God willing. Anyways, I hope you all are doing well. Please keep safe. Be well. I'll see you on the next episode, in the next discussion of, I almost forgot, this is the book I'm using. I know it's backwards, as I always say. The Establishment of Clear Exposition, a commentary on AL-HＡDI'S, The Fundamentals of the Religion. Usuluddin, I believe, is the name of the book in Arabic. Usuluddin. The Fundamentals, Kitab Usuluddin, by Imam Al-Hadi. The Fundamentals of the Religion, published by the Imam Rassi Society. Imam Rassi was Imam Al-Hadi's grandfather, if I'm not mistaken. So, peace be upon them both. They were descendants of Ahl al-Bayt, the descendants of Al-Hasan. Peace and blessings be upon him. And so, this is the book I'm using. You should get it. You can find it online. Find it, get it, read it, and teach it. It's full of information that you need. If you like these videos, you will love this book. Thanks for watching. Take care. Keep safe. Have a beautiful day, night, whatever time it is where you are. Take care. And peace be with you.